Hello and welcome to the Daily Roto Premium NBA Show. This is the Monday, March 15th edition. Andrew Barron here, Christopher Pacheco here. We got an 8-game slate tonight. Pacheco, hey man, you ready to basketball?
I am so ready to basketball.
Great. Let's do that. Let's see here. We're going to try to speed it up a little bit. I know everyone enjoys listening to the way that we break things down, but we will attempt to do that a little bit quicker, as it's been in the works for a while. But we're actually going to see what we can do here tonight. The back-to-back situation isn't too bad. Only the Lakers are the only team on the front end, and we got 4 teams that played yesterday. We will discuss them as we get to them. But first game we're going to get to is Milwaukee and Washington, which actually doesn't have a blowout spread. It's 8.5, but we got a couple questionables to look out for. What are you looking at here, man? What's the news?
So on the Washington side, Bradley Beal's off the injury report. Beal did not play last game for Washington, and that game was against Milwaukee as well. Washington was able to make it a competitive game, and we saw multiple pretty big performances in that game, which was not really surprising. It was just a matter of if it could stay competitive and going into the fourth quarter, if the studs could get the minutes. That's exactly what happened. But tonight for Washington, they are listing Bertans and Neto as questionable. And the Bertans thing is pretty – I mean, both of them are kind of meaningful, but the Bertans thing is meaningful specifically for Hachimura. His minutes have just taken on a new level without Bertans in the lineup. He's been playing high 30s minutes instead of like minutes in the 20s or low 30s with Bertans in there. So it's a pretty big change to his projection and meaningful enough where it would put him in a playable range. With Bertans in, he's just not. He's not. I can't really say that about Hachimura in terms of him being playable, at least on DraftKings. On FanDuel at 4,900, I think you can take some shots there in MME. Bertans is in, but if he's out, I think we're going to be singing a very different tune with Hachimura. The Neto thing is a little bit harder to decipher simply because Smith is not around for Washington. And so I think the one thing I could say with a lot of confidence is we probably see closer to 40 minutes out of Westbrook.
Yep.
And then, we might see a little bit more Troy Brown. We didn't see Jerome Robinson at all last game, even though Bradley Beal was out. So that I can't imagine that being a positive thing for him in terms of cracking the rotation. But it's almost 23 minutes that we're having to replace there, Andrew, if
Right.
Neto's out of the lineup. So someone's going to have to play these minutes. We believe that Westbrook probably plays a little bit more than we're projecting if Neto's out of the lineup.
No, I think that makes sense. Westbrook has been back to just playing. He can play monster minutes when he wants to. Like you mentioned in the last game, which was the back end of a back-to-back, he played 40 minutes and Hachimura played 39. So, they're willing to run these guys out there a bit. I did want to talk about Bradley Beal briefly because it does feel like he hasn't had the total explosion game in a while. So I checked it out a bit. The Sims have liked him a lot, where his ownership has been a little low, especially on FanDuel. The price tag is taken a bit to come down. It's under 10K today. So is the ownership. It's only like 7%, but it's 16% optimal percentage. So I wanted to check a little bit because I would agree that it doesn't feel like he's really gone nuts in a while, but his usage and assist rate haven't changed a whole lot in the last month. He's just kind of had a narrower range of outcomes. He had 1 or 2 real stinkers, but it has not been, it's more just been like he's pumping out 45 to 50 every time. And we've run into this with a few guys lately where it's like, all right, if they can get to 60, but they just really haven't. I think that will come with Beal, though. The Sims still really like him because he's had such a wide range of outcomes early. He did put up some monster games, but one thing as I was sort of looking into him that really did surprise me, his frequency of three. Do you think, when I say Bradley Beal, do you just think of a 3-point bomber? You can say no.
I did not used to think about Bradley Beal in that way, but given the way that the NBA has changed, he's certainly bombing more from that range.
Incorrect, oddly, which is a really strange thing. Listen, this is what I would have thought too. It just earlier in his career, he was taking about 40% of his shots from three, which makes sense. He was more catch and shoot. He was more off the ball, but he is like a primary dude now, and like he's well below average for his position at number of threes as percentage of threes. He takes about a third of his shots per game, which is the 29th percentile for a wing this season, and that's come down. It's been, he was in the 90th percentile earlier on his career, 60, 49, 42 to 29 this year. He's taken like 7 threes per 36, which is in the Kyrie, LeBron territory, and those guys take less shots than he does. So, yeah, I was really surprised by that, how much of a mid-range guy he is, but it does make sense. He's responsible for his own shot and creating his own shot a lot more. But I do like Beal for tournaments this evening because I just don't think he's going to be crazy high owned. As far as the the Milwaukee side goes, you got anything that stands out to you here?
Well, the main thing now for Milwaukee is that Drew Holiday's back to playing normal minutes. He played nearly 33 last game, and he's averaged right around 31 minutes on the season. So that's exactly what we're projecting tonight. It looks like, all the reins are off in terms of the minutes limit or, whatever he had going there. Clearly, he had a minutes limit coming into it. He wasn't even starting at one point, but now he's back to starting, playing full minutes. We are trying to project like how that affects Middleton and Giannis and just the whole team in terms of the rates. There's always a chance that the rates are a little bit more in flux than what we're projecting, but I still feel pretty good about where we have it, especially because we had a lot of data earlier in the season. That's kind of what we're projecting. So kind of no surprise there.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. There is some potential for blowout. Obviously, it's Milwaukee. They are, pretty high. They just have such a really sick offense that when they're firing on all cylinders, they can make it get out of hand pretty quickly, and they are quick to pull the plug. That's not necessarily unique to them this season. It's happening with a lot of teams, so I wouldn't really bug out about it too much. Giannis looks to be incredibly popular. He should be the highest owned player on FanDuel, I believe. Should be the premium stud to spend up for, which does make sense. He's a great play. I do think it's time to revisit the whole Bobby and Giannis binary outcomes thing, because it really hasn't been that way. I really noticed that over the weekend where they had a game where neither of them did it, and they did blow a team out. But like Portis is such an important part of the rotation that he doesn't get like the entire garbage run anymore. Like when they're emptying the bench, he's not part of it, So that does bum me out. It gives me a little pause. That said, guess how much he is? He's 4K on FanDuel tonight. So
yeah, and 4,700 on DraftKings, which I still think is plenty playable in tournaments. I mean, we were playing him when he was like 5K ish.
Oh yeah, over. He was like 5,200 last week, I believe. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what do you think there? I mean, I know like what I had been doing generally is not like super common of a strat, but I would generally play it. I'd be able to get over Giannis and play. I would have Giannis or Portis in 60-70% of my lineups generally for MME, and play 40-50% Giannis and 10 or 20% Portis, and just kind of hope for a binary outcome. Which did work a lot, but I don't think it's just like one of those is going to work anymore. But with the Portis price tag so cheap,
yeah.
I mean, would you consider playing them together? I'm still a little scared of that, but
I think the way I would do it, especially with Bobby Price so cheaply, is just negative boost. The rules, like, and understand again, I'm not MME. At this point, right? So
sure, yeah.
It's kind of easier said than done, right? When you're sitting on this side and you're not necessarily playing those contests. But with that said, like Bobby's too cheap, and there are situations out there where both of them would land in an optimal, right? In the nuts lineup. I think that is still a thing. If Bobby was 5,600, maybe we'd be singing a different tune. But at these price tags, he just doesn't need to do. If he has a potential to hit 30 fantasy points. This price tag at 4K, that's just that's too cheap. So I would negative boost and not make a rule there to max one.
Agreed. And I might just be like kind of souring on him in general because it's not like he's not going to get 28 minutes if it blows out. I don't think.
Yeah.
Anymore. I don't think that's really.
I understand where you're coming from in terms of just the pure minutes upside.
Right. He's not closing in a close game, and he's not like the end of the bench, like play the last 8 minutes of a blowout guy anymore either. So it's a little bit that makes it tough. That makes him not as much of a like, okay, this is a really fun sneaky play. There's a lot of guys like him now, so
sure,
not as exciting to me. So
fair enough. But at 4K, I mean that's
absolutely.
That's tough, Mm-hmm.
There's a few other guys I think that are in that like cheap. The power forward is like a nice spot to get those dudes too, because you get those, a lot, especially on FanDuel where they're not like their position eligibility is not like perfect, let's say, or like super attentive, and you can get a lot of those like backup bigs that are, that are playing like centers and do that sort of wild center outcome, and it's like if they play 22 minutes and run into 4 stocks, then they just smash their $4,000 price tag. There's a few of those guys tonight, so I don't know. But yeah, he's a good play. It's just he might get double digit owned too. So
right,
I don't know. A lot of Bobby Porter stuff. We can carry. We can move on from that. Sacramento and Charlotte. Charlotte's really starting to be one of those annoying teams to project. They tried this rotation with since Devontae Graham has come back. They tried this rotation twice recently, where he plays like the second half of the first or third quarter, then he leaves and comes back. So he'll come in the second half of the first quarter or the third quarter. Mm-hmm. Then he leaves at the turn, comes back with like 3 minutes into the second or fourth quarter, and then leaves again and doesn't close. So he's getting 2 rotations. This happened twice in the last 2 games where he got 2 rotations and a half, but didn't start or close. Mm-hmm. That's so annoying. So anyway, there's just like multiple things they're trying to do. They've done the PJ Washington thing lately. PJ Washington has done the Giannis like triple rotation a couple times, but also hasn't closed sometimes. Sometimes it's come out and played the entire fourth quarter. I don't know. What do you make of Charlotte? Anything you got on them for me? They're confusing me lately.
Well, here's why. They're playing 10 guys now.
Yeah,
and playing, with
10 real dudes. It's not like the 8-minute guy at the end, right?
Nope. I mean, Cody Martin has been playing double digits minutes here, even with Graham back in there. Malik Monk is still obviously playing a big role. Big role for the team, not necessarily for DFS, right? Enough minutes where some of the other dudes are going to definitely be impacted. I mean, we're projecting 18 and a half minutes there. For Martin, we're projecting just shy of 10. I think Graham was definitely going to play more than 17 last game, but the game was an ugly blowout against Toronto. He didn't play at all in the fourth. Right. I think he would have played a little bit at least to start the fourth or somewhere in the fourth. I think he would have played.
Minutes 9 to 4 in the fourth, basically, was what he was doing. So weird.
Yeah. So, so I think we're going to see a little bit more there. That's why we're projecting 22 instead of 17 or 18, where he's actually been over the last couple of games. That's really the main thing with Charlotte now. They're playing 10 guys. The 10 guys they're playing, they're going to play 10 plus minutes. Ish. Even the ones that are like bottom of the bench, right? Which would be Cody Martin in this instance. He's playing right around 10 plus minutes, which is, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but for our purposes, it's like enough to screw potentially another guy or, Terry Rozier, who was playing like 35, 36 minutes pretty consistently without Devontae Graham. Now we're projecting him for 31. Same thing kind of applies to LaMelo as well. So, Andrew, just a different situation altogether with so many guys now for Charlotte.
Yeah, it really makes it tricky, and you'll just gotta have to get creative with your at most combos here. Put the guys that are going to compete for minutes with one another in the same buckets, and make sure you're only playing a certain number of them because they will directly compete with each other. Zeller and Biyombo have been an annoying one too. Like, who do they play? Does one of them play a lot and the other gets screwed? Do they both play a little bit? both of them play not much at all, and they close with PJ Washington in the fight. Like it's all in play. It's
Sure.
It's really not what you want to see. Sacramento is a little more what you want to see. They've kind of gone back to their previous rotation with Halliburton closing over Bagley, like what they were doing before. They've just been kind of taking it easy on Halliburton, letting him come back slowly. So I think he'll get to 30-plus minutes again soon, but it hasn't been happening so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty much there with you. And outside of like Rashawn, just like he's been playing mid to high 30s minutes of late. So I think in terms of like customizing your own minutes, I think you could potentially get away with a little bit more Rashawn than what we're projecting in terms of like maybe projecting for 33, 34 instead of 31.6 in order for you to get a little bit more of them. But I think the price tags on him are like it's acceptable to play him in whatever format of your choosing. Though center, he's a center, and we do have Joker tonight. We don't have Embiid, but we do have Joker, so that's always kind of annoying. But I think Rashawn is certainly in play tonight in essentially all formats. Outside of that, Andrew, I don't have much for you simply because of how consistent Sacramento has been with their rotations. I think Fox, given the price tag, it's elevated now, but I still think he's plenty in play at around 9K on both sites. Still think he has the 60 bomb in him, so at 9K, I still think that's plenty playable.
Yeah, he really does. Bielitsa is a guy in the very cheap power forward mix on FanDuel. He's 3,500. We've got him projected for about 18 minutes. Do you think there's potential for him to get much more than that and really sort of blow that out? Because he's showing it like an 8% optimal, but that's sort of that knows that there is potential for his minutes to get run out that has been shown in the past. Do we think that's happening now when they're a little more full?
Depends on the minutes that you'd ask. 30 sounds very, very unlikely, right?
But 24 where he hits 8, 9 threes, that's maybe not 8, 9, but 6, 7.
He would need like someone to get into big foul trouble, I think, for that to happen. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities if it's just like foul trouble that he needs, because he's been at he just played 18 last game. So getting into the 20s all of a sudden doesn't seem like that far-fetched. No. But when he was playing bigger minutes, it was like when Halliburton wasn't around, where he was playing like mid-20s. Now with Hallie back in there and playing more, he's been at 12 and 18 over the last two. So, look, at 3,500, though, I'd still play it. Is it going to work out more times than not? Probably not. But at 3,500, I'd still play it. I'd still want a piece in MMA at the very least.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like it's worth a sprinkle. He's probably negative. I would make an at most 2 of like the bigs in general there. You're probably not going to. But I wouldn't play like Bielitsa and Holmes is probably not something you want to do together. So.
Well, because you've mentioned this before too. It's not. I'm not talking about hitting the 18 FanDuel points that we're talking about. It's like blowing past the projection, and that's why I say, will more times than not this work? It's probably not going to, in terms of blowing the projection out of the water. But at 3,500, you also don't need 35 FanDuel points.
Right, 28, 29 will work, especially potentially tonight, where you've got a lot of premium studs. You've got Jokic, Giannis, and Luka, and LeBron and whatnot. But he's kind of a tier below those guys at this point. But you've got a lot of premium studs. So if you're seeing multiple 70 bombs out there, then like 28 from a $3,500 power forward becomes quite useful.
Then there, yeah.
And exactly we're not 18 from Bielitsa is not doing it for us tonight. So that's not what we're talking about. So we're not trying to hit the projection when we're talking about tournament plays. So
right.
I hear you. Speaking of not hitting the projection on tournament plays, the most interesting tournament decision tonight is on FanDuel is Karis LeVert is priced at $4,100. That's dumb. It's real dumb. Yeah. And Jeremy Lamb is questionable too. So that would, in theory, free up more minutes for him. That's another wing. I don't know. What do you what do you think, man? It's like talk me into or out of, I mean, 4,100, is it inconceivable he doesn't hit that? Like, I mean, it's probably inconceivable that he doesn't hit his, like value. It's somewhat inconceivable that he doesn't hit 22 points, which is kind of what paying off 4,100 would be. But like for tournaments to be that not play, like he's probably going to get, 30 something, 31, 32. Is that
okay?
I mean, that's pretty likely to happen, but it's not a favorite for sure.
Well, wasn't LeVert priced around the same price tag last game when he came back? Like I think he was like mint priced on FanDuel.
I think so too.
Or something like that. So I don't understand why they priced him this way in the second game back. And plus, he already played.
DK put him up to 7. Yeah. He had no minutes restriction. DK has already put him up to $7,000 again, which is
yeah,
that's probably overpriced. But
yes.
like whatever. That's better to be over than under sometimes for certain things.
So relative to what I saw in that game, I mean, look, man, this is one game. It's the first game that he's been with Indiana. He just made his debut last game. So, it's a very small sample. But he played nearly 27 minutes, had a 32% usage rate, 10.5% assist rate, and 16% rebounding rate. I think the rebounding rate obviously is a bit too high. And again, some of the
assist rate's low.
Yeah, some of the issues that you run into on a small sample, which this definitely would apply. Not that LeVert is a bad rebounding guard, but 16% is also not projectable.
No, he should be in that 10% range. Yeah,
he should be around that 10% range. We have him at 8%. The assist rate, I think, was really telling. And I think a challenge that this Indiana starting lineup will have in general, because it has Sabonis and Brogdon in it as well. And now you're adding LeVert, who essentially was playing point guard for the Nets before this trade. So we are trying to middle this situation as much as we can. And I've lowered LeVert below his career average in assist rate. So we have him at 22%. He's scaling down a little bit to 21.5%. But Andrew, there's a chance that one game, he's the one that has the assist rate in the 20s, and Brogdon and Sabonis are hurting, right? And their assist rates are going to be below their seasonal averages. Like stuff like that is going to happen. LeVert is going to have the ball in his hands quite a bit.
Brogdon is a much better off-ball player than him too, so like that's worth exploiting.
Yeah, and Brogdon in general, like his rates weren't really that affected last game with LeVert in, which we are not expecting things to move too crazily here in favor of one over the other. But LeVert is his rates are pretty significant enough where someone could hurt. And so that's kind of what I'm saying here. I think in terms of him paying off his tag on FanDuel at 4,100, it's pretty darn likely. But for tournament winning upside, I think what you will need is if you're talking like not hitting that, you're going to need a performance like last game for LeVert, where he doesn't even play 27 minutes, has a big usage rate, but maybe he just doesn't cash in and has some rust from that perspective, and then he's not really assisting or rebounding much. All things that are pretty possible. This is the second game back, so it's not impossible, but I will also admit that the price tag is quite dumb, and you need to run hot for him to not get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, don't play him. Not playing him in cash is a massive mistake. Obviously, full caveat. It's just that like if he gets 28 points, he's probably not going to be optimal, and that's what we're projecting him for. So that's his, that's a median outcome. That's the most likely thing to happen. So like. It's not like he's a favorite to end up in tournament winning lineups. We see this over and over again. It happened with Tobias Harris over the weekend and Kevin Porter Jr. yesterday. It's just like, these guys usually don't get there when they are the massive chalk. That's why the leverage scores say that they're low. It's just that there's not like it's not like there's an option that's like equally viable or equally likely to get there. You got to sacrifice a little bit of probability, but you're getting a lot less ownership. That's what we were talking about with our last show was, I think Friday was Jokic versus Embiid when Embiid was 35% owned and Jokic was 10% owned. And it was like, well, Embiid's 25% to be the optimal center, and Jokic is 17, and Jokic beat the hell out of him. So it was like that was a pretty clearly obvious pivot. Center's the easiest place to do it because they're just 1v1s. But, Embiid versus Jokic, it's like just play the lower owned one. They're both good plays every single time they play. So just like play the one that isn't as high owned, and that's how that worked the other time. So similar thing with LeVert tonight. That's the big strategy question, I think, especially on FanDuel. What's up, Chris? What's up, SB? What's up, Noel? We got LBI trolling my hair. Appreciate it all. Nice. Thanks for checking in, everyone. It's good stuff. Okay, they are playing Denver, and that worries me a little bit for Sabonis. Because we've talked a bit about him being like a very exploitative player. He's like the bully at the gym where it's like when he's bigger than the guy, he just puts him right in the basket. But he's not going to be able to straight overpower Jokic or Millsap. Jokic isn't a very good rim protector, but that's more about drivers. And Sabonis isn't a driver, but he's getting there from the elbow and moving in and he does some post up stuff, but he's not going to be able to just take it over from Jokic or Millsap. Those guys are just as strong as him. So I'm not sure if it's his night, but tell me what you think about Sabonis, and then give me some news and notes that we got for Denver, please.
So Sabonis, my main issue is the price tag. Still, it's frankly not even the matchup with him, because if he was just cheaper, I would be touting him, right? Over 9, I've been doing this with so many guys. If you've tuned into the show, you know that with Zach and SGA and certain guys, when they reach a certain price tag, I'm just kind of turned off by the whole thing. And Sabonis has been very consistently in the 40s this year in terms of fantasy production, but above that, it gets harder for him to get there. I know last game he had a triple-double. He's had some big performances, and he can still kind of do that. But the price tag for me is an issue in both cash and tournaments. Frankly, if you were to play him in cash, I don't think it's horrible, but I think in tournaments, it's harder for me to envision Sabonis getting there, especially if you believe that this matchup isn't as good as some of the others. Then I think that's even more problematic given the price tag. So I'm probably not too much into Sabonis tonight. I think the best angle for him is that the ownership isn't there. So if you disagree with me completely and you still think that this is a spot that's exploitable, you can play 10% and be over the field here on DraftKings. On FanDuel,
right about 10%.
He's right around 10%. And again, you could play it at 20% and still be nearly double the field there. That's if you disagree with me on all the things that I just said. As far as Denver is concerned, they don't have Monte Morris tonight or Gary Harris, Andrew. They didn't have Monte Morris last game either. They're going to be fine because they have Campazzo back and they have PJ Dozier back as well. Campazzo played 26 minutes last game. Obviously, they still have Jamal Murray. They have enough there to cover for Monte Morris being out and for Gary Harris out as well. So I'm not too worried about that. We saw Paul Millsap back in the starting lineup. That game without Monte Morris, my guess is we probably see Millsap in there again for Sabonis or whatever in the starting lineup. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again. I guess the main thing with Denver tonight is the Joker play, right? He's projecting for 1 million points again, which not surprising at this point. Price tags are, his price tags are where they are. He's going to be here pretty much all season. So I still think he's a very good play. We have him at 21.8% optimal percentage on FanDuel and only 20% ownership. Right. So I think it's plenty playable tonight.
No, I think that's right, because it does appear that Giannis is going to end up being the most popular stud. So you've got, like we were talking about earlier, there's also, we've got Harden, Giannis, Jokic. Luka is less expensive than all of these guys, which is wild. You've got LeBron against Golden State. So yeah, there are plenty. This is weird. Giannis is not a guy I like to short. But I think I might tonight. I think he's going to be the most popular of the studs, and there's so many other ones that it's like, okay, yeah, just give me the field. I can get, if I don't play much Giannis, I can get over all of the other ones. And I'd be pretty surprised if one of them doesn't beat him. So Jokic is definitely one of those guys for me. Porter, it's kind of got that dumb price tag again. This is where like we were hoping he would have been a couple weeks ago. I mean, that with JaMychal and Millsap left in, there's a lot more fragility to it. Like if he pisses off Malone, then he's done. But there's not really any safety there. But it's fine. It's he's 6,700, and like the guy's got like pretty massive upside. So I don't mind taking a couple shots there. I probably wouldn't do it with Jokic because I kind of feel like it's one or the other, just like completely smashing. But that guy makes for a little bit of sense. Well, all right, the Knicks and the Nets are playing tonight. We have the Battle of New York. Is this an exciting game to you?
Well, Brooklyn's an exciting team. New York isn't really that exciting, but it is what it is with the Knicks. They're just playing slow and boring, but it's kind of worked out for them in some ways this year. They've at least been competitive, and so good for them.
No, they've been pretty decent.
Yeah.
We'll see. Like I have a few, there's some pace concerns obviously with the Nets, but that's going to keep down their ownership some. They're not reaching that Giannis level because like everyone, knows the pace stuff. It's in the projection model. So they're losing one or two possessions, which is giving them a tiny bit lower of a projection. Yep. There's a like Thibodeau sort of Bill Belichick thing where he'll just kind of take away the best options sometimes. Like I've looked into this a little and I couldn't find a ton, but they're not. I don't think they're almost certainly not icing like they used to years ago, which is what like the Celtics used to do and the Bulls used to do, because that will get just destroyed by pick and pop, which just like really wasn't nearly as much of a thing. 10 years ago, it was like Gasol and Bosch and Garnett were like your pick and pop guys, and they were like thought of as deadly, and they had. Those guys couldn't, those guys had range to the elbow, basically. It's pretty funny, like thinking about it. But the ice where you like, it's basically a trap where you you're like taking away the sideline and pushing the guy towards the middle, whatever. If you're interested in talking about that a little more, you can feel free to hit me up in Slack or on Twitter. But it will get killed by pick and pop. So I don't think they're doing a lot of that, which is essentially a trap where you're trying to either push the guy into a bad shot in the mid range or send him, get the ball away from him. So that's like much tougher to deal with in the modern NBA. We've got much more shooters that are the screeners, but they might do some trapping. They might just like take it out of Harden's hands. I mean, I don't know. That gets it to Kyrie, who's not a great option to like give carte blanche to either.
Right.
But I don't know. I do think either Harden or Kyrie is a pretty good. Like I would like to get over both of them. I feel like one of them is going to end up having a pretty good game here, assuming no blowout. You got any thoughts there?
No, it's a reasonable, I think it's a reasonable thing to say in terms of the matchup. It's not the greatest. We could at least agree on that. Sure. As you mentioned, some of these aspects in terms of the pace and stuff like that, it's already baked into the projection. So I don't want to like double count and just tell you, negative boost because the matchup is bad. Like, I'm not going to tell you that either.
Thank you. I appreciate you looking out for me like that.
Perhaps it's a little bit difficult of a spot in terms of like multiple guys reaching their full potential. So Kyrie and Harden, are probably both not going to get there in a meaningful way. In terms of like for Kyrie, it's a 60 burger. For Harden, an 80 burger. I think they're a dog to kind of do that, but frankly, that's kind of dumb to say because they're a dog to do that in any matchup, even in a good one. They're a dog to do that. So yeah, sure, some matchup concerns here, but the main thing for Brooklyn tonight in terms of news and notes is TLC is probable and likely to play, obviously, but we don't think that's going to do much for their rotation, especially for the main guys. Harden, Kyrie are unaffected by that. If anything, maybe Claxton plays a little bit less or Green or something like that. But I think for the most part, it's not going to be very like obvious who gets hurt there. Maybe TLC just doesn't even play much anymore, frankly, because Brooklyn's pretty full at this point without Kevin Durant. So not much in the way of effects there. But there is a lot of stuff to talk about on the New York side, Andrew, because they're missing Derrick Rose tonight, and they're also missing Alfred Payne, who's doubtful to play.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also missing Austin Rivers, which, I know it's not. It sounds like it's not that big of a deal, but that's like it's a guard that could play potentially point guard minutes for them.
Yeah,
and
we were bummed that they had like 6 guards in the rotation, and you just named 3 of them that aren't playing. So
yeah, and the other problem that New York has is that they've been starting Frank, and he's been pretty bad.
That is a problem.
Yeah, and he's been pretty bad, and so we have a 2-game sample here of Payne and Rose not playing for the Knicks, and then Frank played like 24 minutes in one, but he didn't play at all in the second half. In the first half, the second quarter, he didn't play at all in that game, and then quickly just plays like a lot of that. And they also have Alec Burks that can play backup point guard if it just came down to that. Like he can give them like a 5 to 6 kind of minute burst thing, and then quickly and Frank just play the rest of the point guard minutes, which I think is pretty likely to happen tonight. I think Frank, he hasn't done enough for me to like him at all. I don't think the minutes are secure there, which is A, a problem, and then B, the rates have been horrific. The rates have been lower than what we're projecting for him on the season, which is, we're not even projecting him for good rates, and he's been under that. So that's a really big challenge for him. I think Quickly is a standout play here. It's a really nice matchup for a lot of these Knicks. Quickly, Julius Randle specifically, his rates have been pretty darn good of late, especially without these point guards out there, Payne and Rose. His assist rate has been right around the 30%. So, I really like Randle tonight, and I know our optimal percentage for him is only 12% on FanDuel, and he's a little bit overowned. But I think his ceiling improves without the point guards in this lineup, because Quickly has been more of a shooting guard rather than a point guard. Sure. His assist rate hasn't really been that significant with the Knicks. So there's lots to like there for Julius.
No, I think that's right. Yeah, I think if Quickly closes with the starters, like if it's over Frank or whoever, then you're right. He ends up being like sort of the off guard, and Randall essentially ends up being the point guard. So I'm with you there. I think the price tag is decent. It's down a little. It's actually around where it has been, but considering it's got the Brooklyn bump, they can't do a whole lot. I think it's a good one. Yeah, and I prefer some Nick is probably going to have a good game tonight, and when Quickly's 35% owned, I'd rather find someone else. I don't trust RJ Barrett. Nerlens Noel's not doing it himself. Alec Burks just continually disappoints, but he is only 4,100, so I'm going to end up having some, and it's probably going to be disappointing, but blah, blah, blah. So I think, Randall's the most likely guy there. So I'm with you. I think that he makes for a really solid play tonight. So
it's kind of what you did with Sabonis in terms of you don't think that that's a 60 burger spot. I think that this is a 60 burger spot for Randall. And he's really the only Nick that could get to 60 realistically. Quickly could get into the 40s in this one. It would not surprise me if he has a monster game.
No.
But he also has this dumb price tag on FanDuel, 4,600. So he's going to get tons of ownership. And the thing is, I understand it. I understand it fully, but there are some ways to get off of that. Look, if you want to win a tournament, you can't play,
Quickly and LeVert. Yeah,
Quickly, LeVert, all the chalk guys, it's going to be really hard for you to do that because you're not going to get much in the way of leverage.
Right. And Quickly, LeVert being such massively popular chalk is the reason Harden's not getting very owned, because people will just play Quickly and LeVert, and then they don't have, that's their 2 shooting guards. They don't have room for Harden. That's why, it's okay, if I play Quickly and LeVert, then I can afford studs at other positions like Giannis at power forward. So that's kind of where the natural funneling is happening tonight. So yeah, I think playing Harden is pretty weird in its own right, just because by doing that, there is one of Quickly or LeVert that you will not have in your lineup. So makes for a solid strategy. Okay, the San Antonio Spurs take on the Detroit Pistons. San Antonio's on the back end of a back-to-back. And DeLon Wright is popping as really nice value on DraftKings. I don't know. Chuck Diallo's still hurt. Jeremy Grant's still kind of bad chalk. Got anything else? What do you let's talk about Detroit first.
Yeah. So Detroit tonight is not going to have Dennis Smith Jr. So DeLon Wright is popping a little bit more as a result because we're projecting over 30 minutes there now. He just came off a game in which he nearly played 32 very recently. So there's a good bit to like there. DeLon isn't a guy that has monster upside, but has upside enough in the fives where I think you can play him. If he's massive chalk, I don't think that you want to play him into massive chalk, but doesn't seem to be the case tonight. Even on DraftKings, he's at like 13% ownership. I think that's fine. I don't think it's horrible. I think it's fine for the most part. But yeah, outside of that, there's not a whole lot going on. Wayne Ellington is out for this team, and they just traded for Diallo recently, so they don't have Zvi anymore. But Diallo's not ready to play either. So you should see a good amount of Josh Jackson.
Rodney shoots Magruder. A lot. He sure shoots a lot, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And the price tag on Jackson came down a little bit on both sites. And that was my main that's like the thing I said last time that his price tag was just really annoying. But now he's 5,200 on FanDuel, 5,400 on DraftKings. I would play that. I would play that.
What a sick like direct pivot. He's a little bit more expensive than Quickly and LeVert, but like, if Josh Jackson shoots hot, like he's plenty capable of scoring 35. And if those guys only score 32 or 30 or 28, then like
just think about it from the projection standpoint already. Just think of it this way: LeVert is projecting for 27, Jackson's projecting for 26.
Sure.
Sure. The price tag is different because he's $1,100 more expensive. But from a projection standpoint, we are saying there's really not that big of a difference between both of these guys.
Right. And at $1,000 difference, you need like, I don't know, you're hoping for like a 5 or 6 point difference. That's really not hard to do when they're, when they're at such similar projections. So,
and Jackson has shown enough of a ceiling for me in Detroit in terms of the rates being pretty extensive. The minutes could get pretty extensive there at times. If he gets hot, he's not going to play 26 minutes. He probably plays 30 plus because we're also projecting Magruder, who's, not like the coach really likes him, but this isn't really much of an NBA player. We're projecting for 26 minutes. And so if Magruder's not really doing anything and Detroit is losing, man, we might even see Josh Jackson at 30 minutes regardless, simply because of the depth of this team.
I think you're right. There's no DSJ out there to like carry him to the promised land. So you gotta get it from somewhere.
Right.
Josh Jackson, not a dissimilar story overall. What's up, Run CNC? Says thanks for having the pod early. We're trying, man. Let's give a bit more of a window by having this start more around 3, so that hopefully you guys have 4 hours to listen to it instead of the 2 hours and 10 minutes we were leaving you with before. So no problem, man. Glad to accommodate. The Spurs are on the back end. They are the Detroit's opponent, and they've been a little bit funky lately. They've got Devin Vassell's back, but you were talking about DeMar DeRozan being out still earlier. What do you think is going on with the Spurs tonight, and are they as difficult to figure out rotation wise as they have been earlier in the year?
Well, they don't have DeRozan. So yesterday they lost by 1 million points to Philadelphia, who did not have Joel Embiid. So, and for as much as people want to, crap on DeRozan that he's not a 1A stud and, his game might be a little bit outdated because he's just such a mid-range guy. He's been their best player also. You could argue DeJounte Murray is also up there in terms of the Spurs' best player. But I think DeRozan's probably been their most meaningful guy. And when he's not out there, it's, they're probably more prone to being blown out, right? Even though they have all these dudes in there. So there are some impacts there that I think it's going to be difficult for Vegas to pick that up completely. But I think it's being picked up enough tonight because their total is down to 107. Whereas their seasonal average has been closer to 111. So, I think they're projecting the DeRozan thing enough there that at least I'm appeased with their total. but Detroit is not a very good team. I know it's a 2-point spread here, but I don't know. It's probably a cop-out answer to say there's some level of blowout risk in any game at this point in the NBA season.
Absolutely.
But there is some systemic risk here because these teams, especially Detroit, is not very good. San Antonio playing without DeRozan has been a challenge. We just saw it yesterday. And then back-to-back also adds another wrinkle to this, Andrew, because DeJounte Murray, we saw him being affected very recently in one of their back-to-back games. He just didn't play well at all, and his minutes got cut. And this team is healthier this time around. I know DeRozan isn't playing, but they still have a lot of dudes that are playing and might not be meaningful for DFS, but like as an example, Trey Lyles has been starting lately, and he hasn't even been playing 16 minutes. And that's what we're projecting for him tonight. So there's enough annoyance going around where I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I think it's going to be really hard for the Spurs at their price tags to be tournament winners.
No, I think that's right. I mean, Murray's kind of, he's the one with the big ceiling just because he can put up, and Pirtle too, because they can put up the, all the defensive stats so quickly. Patty Mills is nice because he's so cheap all the time, but like his ceiling is kind of seems like it's like 25. So that's a little tough because he doesn't do much other than shoot threes and pick up a couple assists. So yeah, I'm with you. They're still a tough team to project even without DeRozan. And and people crap on DeRozan for good reason. He's not been like the most. His teams have kind of consistently done better without him on the floor, but it's valuable to have a guy like that. Whether or not it's valuable for him to be taking every shot is another story. But it's valuable to have someone that can take those shots because not really anyone else on their team can. So you want to have that guy around, and they don't tonight.
He's been their best playmaker per se, and his assist rate this year has been really, really high. We have him at 33% on the season, and he's been at 33% on the season in terms of what he's averaged. So I agree with you in terms of it's probably not the best playmaker out there, but he's been their best guy. So it's just tough when you don't have him out there. Agreed.
Two teams that will have their best guys tonight are the Los Angeles Clippers on the back end of a back-to-back, and the Dallas Mavericks. Who are on an island game here. The Clips just got housed by New Orleans yesterday, which is surprising because the Clips are really good and New Orleans is not really. But, playing huge is sort of a logical counter to the switchy, smaller teams. You try to beast them on the offensive glass. It wasn't really that as much. I looked into it. It was more that New Orleans shot 41% from three and 100% on long twos, and the Clippers gave up 1 million shots at the rim because of Zion, who was crazy efficient, but frustratingly, he won't seem to nuke. So either way, the Clippers don't have to deal with New Orleans tonight, but they do have to deal with Dallas. What do you got for news and notes? Give me the Clippers first, since I just talked about them.
Yep. So the Clippers have Serge Ibaka Q, which is meaningful enough, especially for Zubats, because we were probably projecting for 20 plus in the event that Ibaka doesn't play. Yesterday, Ibaka, he only played in the first quarter, and then he got hurt and didn't come back due to the back spasms. So Zubats didn't play much, but he also got into heavy foul trouble in the first half. He had 3 fouls, to start the second quarter. So he just didn't play much, and then the blowout, and so it was really tough to see where the minutes were going there. But I think projecting him for 20 plus without Ibaka around is the way to go. However, Patrick Patterson probably plays without Ibaka around, and they can, they also tend to play with these smaller center lineups as well, with Marcus Morris or Batum or something like that at center. So that starts to get a little bit annoying in terms of how to project this without Ibaka in the lineup. But again, it's meaningful enough where Zubats is 4,400 on FanDuel. Where he might start to project as at least as a play, whereas right now he's not really projecting as much of a play. So that one's pretty significant enough to move the needle for at least one or two guys.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's worth thinking about. Almost everyone in this game right now is slightly positive leverage, so it's a nice one to attack.
Yeah.
Kawhi and PG and Luka and Staps, those guys are good at fantasy. So Luka is down to 10.2K on FanDuel given his recent slump. I guess we'll say. I don't know. He's still taking 20 shots a game. He's got double-digit assists over the last month or so. Big thing, he's had a couple just like. He hasn't had the 70 spot in a while, but he also hasn't recorded a stock in his last 3 games. And not like Luka is a huge stocks guy, but he is a huge person and he's got long arms. So he'll get in the passing lane. He'll block a few shots every once in a while. Like he just should get, 2 on average or so. I just made that up. So it's maybe not that high, but between 1 and 2 on average, I would be willing to bet would be in there. And so, one of these games, he's going to get 4 again. He does that quite often. And then all of a sudden the line goes from, he scored, 52. That was such a bummer to, that was 64. And all of a sudden you've got a tournament winner on your hands again. So I like him quite a bit. And he's like not, people are funneling to Giannis over him because Luka's been in some trouble lately. So I like him quite a bit tonight. Anyone else on Dallas that stands out to you?
Yeah, your Luka call is definitely a good one, but it's also Luka. Like, sure. He might have had some floor games here of late, but it's Luka. If you've been around long enough, you realize that it's not going to happen much, and he's going to get back to at least the projection or just going crazy and giving you those 70, 80 burgers. The matchup against PG and Kawhi maybe could be a little bit of a deterrent, but I don't think so.
Yeah, neither of them are going to guard him. It'll be Batum mostly, I think. Yeah.
And if that's the case, it's just not. It is not something to worry about whatsoever. If anything, I would just take the discount on the ownership and price tag and just run with it. Yeah. I think Kristaps is certainly good enough for me to play him at power forward. Here's the island games for Dallas, Andrew. For me, should get touted a little bit more than regular because on back end of back-to-backs, they're always going to do weird stuff. It looks like they're going to want to rest Kristaps in those, and then Luka might be a rest candidate now as well, as we just saw to begin the second half. So that's problematic on their back end of back-to-backs, but on their front end, I know they're full. But if that's when you want to play Luka and Kristaps because they might play a lot of minutes. Luka will play a lot of minutes anyway, but Kristaps could go from like the 32-ish projected to like 35. Yeah. And that's like meaningful enough to move the needle for him. So I think he's certainly playable tonight at power forward, has big enough rates to get you there in a meaningful way. And then beyond that is when things start to get a little bit dicey. I think Jay Rich is fine in MME. Maxi Kleba as a
let's not. I'll save you from that. Let me say.
Well, he'd have to be really, really punt, like 3,500 for me to really like it. 4,400, I'm not into it.
Yeah, it's gross. I mean, there's I'd rather play like I don't know Nick Claxton or something like that. He's got to be still cheap like that, right? I know his minutes aren't as
like secure these days.
Yeah, 3,800. But he can put up a lot in a hurry. And I mean, Jeff Green and DeAndre Jordan are old people, so it's not like they're necessarily going to get stretched out for super long minutes very often. I mean, that's a good blowout candidate. There's Bobby Portis, obviously. I mean, just play Bobby Portis instead of Maxi Kleba. I know it's like more ownership, but Kleba just doesn't have much of a ceiling. So
no,
that's tough. And with Jay Rich and DFS, it's like they can get there, but this is requiring. Those guys aren't going to, with the whole team together, they're not going to score 1,000,000 points. They're not going to score over 30 very often. So you really, then you're talking about you need LeVert and Quickly and some other guys to fail because there are some really good super cheap plays tonight. So that
Tim Hardaway is probably another guy that deserves MME consideration, especially if you want to get off the LeVert and Quickly chalk. It's not as comfortable. But again, just another guy off the bench that can get hot and earn more minutes and has a reasonable shot at high 20s FanDuel points.
Right. And dumb price tag too. He's 4,100 because he's only playing the 26, 27 minutes. And yeah, it's not as stable. He's not going to have the ball in his hands as much as Karis LeVert is, but he hits his shots. Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I will be amping him up a little bit tonight. Okay, the Grizzlies and the Suns are playing tonight. Memphis played yesterday, and I did just see that Justice Winslow was ruled out tonight for injury management. Rest, I'm assuming, on the back end of a back-to-back. So what does that do to Memphis for you? Or is that an unfair question because I just sprung that on you?
No, that's not an unfair question. I should know these things, right? So this is good for Kyle Anderson. This is actually very good for Kyle Anderson. Whose minutes had just been it's been kind of gross with him of late, with Justice in there, which makes sense, right?
They kind of do the same thing where they're the giant point guard.
Yeah, and Justice is going to play enough to screw him. So this just all kind of makes sense. Anderson played like 18 minutes in the start very recently. Competitive game too, by the way, with Justice in there.
I hate Memphis right now.
I know, man. It's tough. But with that said, right? So we're gonna zero out Justice in the next update, and Anderson, maybe Clark is another candidate to get upped a little bit more. But we might have to project some other annoying dude, right? Memphis just plays 10 guys, 11 guys, no matter what. Like, no matter who's in or who's out, they're going to play their guys.
They've got a lot of dudes. And this is without Jaren Jackson. Like, it's going to get so annoying when he's back.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. I think Tillman is also another candidate to see a little bit more minutes as well. His minutes have been really gross of late too. Probably still not playable for DFS.
No.
Grayson, I'll tell you what. I think Grayson Allen is probably a guy that now plays minutes. So that's going to be the annoying guy, right? That we're talking about, the 10th guy. That's probably going to play 20 plus and probably going to not allow someone else to get there.
And this is a guy who was a starter like a few weeks ago and now can't crack the rotation. And
because the Anthony Melton apparently just beat him out outright, and he wasn't playing any minutes. But you'll see him tonight, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah. He'll be back. We'll see some Grayson Allen out there chucking. I mean, decent core. Probably not. I would not. I doubt. We'll probably end up putting an 18 to 22 minute projection on Allen as the guy that sort of steps into the rotation from it. But I don't know that that's going to be enough to get you there. If he starts or something, then he's a decent give him a 1% boost in lineups with Ja Morant and hope that he converts those potential assists that Ja will be no doubt throwing to him. I did want to check. I checked the Valanciunas matchup because he's a fascinating guy to me. I think he's in the center mix tonight, and I wanted to see what the sort of how Ayton did, especially as far as rebounding goes. So Ayton himself gets great rebounding numbers. He scores a lot of them. So it looks like he individually is a really good rebounder, but his team has been below average at defensive rebounding with him on the floor every season of his career. They're okay this year. It's like 45th percentile when he's on the floor, but still below average. Like, they're not great at rebounding when he's on the floor, despite him having great rebounding numbers, which to me says that means he's going after the ball and not the man. He's not doing the Lopez thing and boxing his guy out. He's going after the ball, which means this is potentially great for Valanciunas because it means that he's possibly leaving Valanciunas, and then that's how he beats his way to the 4 putbacks, which is how you get the massive Jonas Valanciunas game. So I think he's in the mix for tournaments tonight. Phoenix is a tough defense, and I think people will shy away because of that. And I think they're right to with some of the plays, but Valanciunas, like big beastly centers like that, don't necessarily get hurt by the game slowing way down and being that kind of thing, because he is getting a lot of his when he's really going nuts, it's a lot of second chance opportunities, and I think he'll have them tonight. So
I think that's a fair point. He's also in the mix for me too. I just wanted to mention that. I certainly like him, especially on FanDuel 7,400. Like that kind of checks out for me in terms of a playable range for Joval. It's not hitting the projection. I'm saying 50 burger is kind of what you want, and he could get you there. For sure. I think, in terms of looking at the matchup and saying, is this a spot for a nutty Ja Morant game? It didn't strike me as that one because of Phoenix and Chris Paul and stuff, and just playing at such a lower pace as well.
It's the pace more than like Chris Paul can't hang with him athletically anymore. He's still a pain in the ass. He'll be a problem for him in the half court, but it's the pace that sucks.
It's the pace. It's the pace, not necessarily the defensive matchup for me. Again, it's not, do I think Ja gets to his projection? I think the projection of like 37 3/4 FanDuel points is spot on. I'm talking about like 56. Could he get you 55, 60?
Right.
It's tougher in this spot. The ownership looks so darn juicy.
Yeah. So
darn juicy. And that's really attractive to me for a player that has big rates. Matchup's really tough though. So if I'm playing MME, would I play I would play 10%. I would be comfortable with 10%. I don't think I would be comfortable with anything above that. Because at 10%, you're still double the fee. You're nearly triple, like almost 3x there.
Right. We talked about Morant against who was it recently? Milwaukee, I think. Where it's like, oh yeah, it's a tough matchup for him, but he's like 5-6% owned. It's dumb that he's that low owned. You got to play over the field, and that was he scored 50 in that game. So. Oh,
true. Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, and that was the
struggling.
whole thing. Is like, listen, I don't love this matchup. I wish he was 25% owned tonight because, then I could feel better about shorting it. But he's 5-6% owned, so I have to get over that because it's dumb not to. And then he went nuts. So, kind of same idea tonight. It's like at 3% owned. Is it a great matchup? No, but is he more likely than 3% owned to be in tournament winning lineups? Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, 10%. I'm in at 10%. Because at 10%, I'm still over the field. That's the beauty of this, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. That's the thing with 3% owned is you don't have. It's not. We're not saying put him in single entry or half your lineups. Yeah, exactly. It's just like you can get over a guy that's 3% owned very easily. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, here. What do we got next? Oh, Phoenix. Anybody you like on that side of the ball? I mean, it's. The DeAndre Ayton price tag has come down quite a bit, but he's been a tough one, more of a cash center almost.
Sheesh, yeah. Bridges is 5K on FanDuel and popping a bit,
popping on DraftKings too, I believe. He's really cheap across the industry.
Well, here's the thing: his rates have been double checked, triple checked. So it is what it is. What I will say though, and I will say this with confidence, is I think the projection is right. I think the ceiling beyond this projection, it's just tough for Bridges to get there. Remember, this is a team with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and then DeAndre Ayton, who's not even really getting there in a meaningful way this year. Which, I mean, what does that tell you? Will a fourth option be able to get you there in a meaningful way more times than not? Very likely not, right?
Right.
30 FanDuel points, yeah, I think he's right around that. I could see that. 35, 40, I mean, even beyond 40, that is tough.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't like him. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he's a very good tournament play because, he's a pretty good defensive player and he's awesome in transition. But say he gets 4 or 5 stocks, is that even getting you to 40? Probably not because he doesn't do anything in the half court. So, I'm just
you're gonna need the stocks. You're gonna need the stocks. Now that I think of it, you're gonna need a lot of them. Because you're right, he doesn't do enough in the half court, but that's not honestly, man. It's not really his fault. I think Bridges has developed enough that he could be a kind of a pretty darn good, awesome player in DFS. But it's opportunity, right? It's the opportunity that he has, and it's not great with both Paul and Booker in the lineup. Agreed.
No, I like Bridges a lot. It's just it's not going to happen for we're not trying to make friends here. The guy just can't get it done in DFS. So, and he's in the 5K range. It's like, okay, he's one of those guys that the projection's right. It's a pretty nice projection, but he's not very likely to be a tournament winner just because it's so hard for him to just blow his ceiling out of the water. So, all right, last game is the Lakers on the front end of a back-to-back and Golden State, who are on the back end of a back-to-back. Is Steph going to be hungover from his birthday, and should we fade him entirely because of that?
No. I don't know if that's. I don't know if it was a trick question or not. And now maybe he probably bombs, right? Because I laughed.
Sure.
But all jokes aside, he's 9,400 on FanDuel, which I think is too cheap of a price tag relative to his ceiling. 10K on DraftKings, okay, that sounds about more right. But he's still too low owned for the spot. Still too low owned for the spot. I know it's second out of a back-to-back, but
ownership is dumb. I don't quite get it.
Yeah, he almost has the Ja Morant ownership on DraftKings, and just he gets you there more times than not. I mean, certainly more than Ja, and I know he's priced like that, but yeah, I mean, I would play him with confidence. The Lakers, while Anthony Davis are not the same Lakers, I think anyone that's been watching and paying attention would understand that. So I like Curry. I like Dre enough to play him at 7K on FanDuel at this ownership. But it's typically the same story with the Dubs, right, Andrew? In terms of I will like Curry, I will like Dre to an extent, and then beyond that, when everyone else is healthy, it's tough for me to see tournament winners everywhere else.
No, that makes sense. I mean, Oubre has had some nights, but he's so expensive. He's going to have that just monster night. And he's, to be fair to him, he's done it a few times, but he's not someone you really want to count on all that often. I do think Montrez can play here. Can potentially close here. The Warriors really don't run much pick and roll. That said, they do run a lot of weird stuff that makes it's not pick and roll, but it's other actions that are difficult to cover, and they can make him look silly if they really want to, but there's not a ton of shooting other than Steph either. So I don't know. I think Montrez can play, and I think he's probably in the conversation. There's a bunch of centers I like, but I don't hate him tonight. Do you have any thoughts there, or any on the rest of the Lakers?
No, I don't hate it. I like you, I thought this was a spot that he could play. I did not think, also like you, I didn't think he could really play, these big minutes against Indiana the other night, and he ended up playing the bigger minutes.
Yep.
To his credit, which goes to show that as much as we like to break down matchups and stuff like that, at times we will be wrong. It's kind of the name of the game. We're going to get some of these wrong, and so. The biggest thing for me is the ownership on Montrez, and it seems like on FanDuel he's getting some because of the fact that he's had a couple big games here, but it's still less than 10%. He's 5,900. That price tag is annoying enough where I think it's going to turn off some people, and so I like it. I would play it. I would also play Schroeder. LeBron, I think, is playable, but as you've said, he's more in the Curry boat than the Joker and some of the other studs that are getting you there in a more meaningful way, right? But still think he's in a playable range. I have no problem with them. Last thing for the Lakers, Kuzma Morris remains really annoying from a prediction standpoint. Morris started last game, only played 18 minutes to Kuzma's 30. So, even again, it's a ceremonial starter type of thing, right? Morris could start. He absolutely will not close all the time.
Agreed. Yeah, LeBron is my least favorite of the very expensive guys tonight, I think, including Westbrook, who, it's just he's going to get double the ownership at $1,000 more than Steph. And it feels a little anathema to what you'd want, because the LeBron projection is almost 5 points higher than Steph's, but the ceiling is lower, frankly. Maybe not the absolute ceiling, but I think the 80th percentile in this situation is probably lower than Steph's is. And I don't know. Yeah, I would much rather play Steph. I know it's the back end of a back-to-back, and it was his birthday yesterday, but he doesn't strike me as the partying type, so not particularly worried about that when it comes to Steph Curry. And that will do it for the games. Do you have any final words or piece of strategy you'd like to impart upon our viewers?
Well, I did want to say Taylor Horton Tucker on the Lakers. He's another shooting guard on FanDuel, 3,700 that I would do. I would do in this spot with the hope that he plays more than Wesley Matthews, which it's not always a given. Like sometimes he will play more than Matthews. Sometimes like a game very recently, he won't. In a blowout, he'll get run.
Right. Is this the Bobby Portis-y kind of thing where you're like, okay, you know?
Yeah. It is.
I like it. I like it a lot.
THT is very much Portis talk, but like blowout run is kind of secure. And 3,700 with a like he can get you into the 30s FanDuel points. Of course, as a ceiling. I'm not talking like on the regular. If not, he wouldn't be priced at 3,700. But this is like what I'd rather play like THC or Patty Mills at their ownerships. Like it's more than likely going to be THT more times than not. But then you have the Quickleys and the Leverts tonight that are going to get a lot of, just a lot of ownership. And so THT would be a guy that I would consider in MME more than not, because in single entry 3 max, I think that's tough. That's really tough. If it hits and you have the nuts everywhere, you're going to win. You're going to win is what I would say.
Yeah,
but
it's
chances. I was just going to say chances of him getting there is probably unlikely.
Agreed. Yeah. But he's going to be 3-4% owned. You'd imagine, maybe even 2. Sometimes that gets a little bit lower than the P owned, just because it's like they aren't in the rotation. So they are guys that get sort of checked out, in the yard trash pool. But he is certainly not yard trash. And here, like if you do like say you play Harden and THT in a lineup on FanDuel, and if that works, like if Harden's one of the guys that scores 70, and THT gets that Lakers Warriors game blows out, and THT gets extended run, and he outscores LeVert and Quickly, then all of a sudden you've gotten rid of LeVert, Quickly, LeBron, who's 23-25% owned, Curry, who's 10-15% owned, and probably one of the other studs, maybe Giannis, who's 40-50% owned. Like if that is that likely to work? No, but think of what is the benefit should it work, right? Like in the one intention it happens, like you're destroying so much of the field by having like a Harden THT at shooting guard lineup. So I'll have a few of those. I like it.
I think the last word for me in terms of strategy is on FanDuel. We've kind of been over it throughout the show, but like the roster construction is okay. So in cash games, you have to play Giannis, Quickly, LeVert.
Sure.
Okay, don't be the guy that doesn't do that. Please do it. You have to do it tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
In tournaments, people are also going to do that a lot, and a lot of people will do it in single entry 3 max as well, especially in single entry. The ownership on a lot of these guys is going to get out of control. Like it's going to be higher than what we're projecting, because our ownership is projecting more of like the lottos, not really single entry 3 max. And I'm here to tell you their ownership is going to be much higher than this in those type of formats. What I will say is
high stakes and single entry are obviously like the higher the stakes, the more chalky the chalk is.
Yeah.
Like honestly, if you can afford it, like the higher the stakes are, the more it makes sense to be just like a total psycho. Because Noel, who's watching right now, said he was very happy to hear us say yard trash, a phrase he coined. Like he does that all the time. He's not afraid to make a wacky decision in high stakes. And if you do that, because no one does it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if people are, especially the chalk that we're talking about, it's pretty good chalk.
Yeah,
I mean, Quickly LeVert at these price tags, it does feel just dumb not doing it. However, we are in an NBA season that has been as unpredictable as I've ever seen a season. I've never seen anything like this, which has been both cool and kind of frustrating. All at the same time, for sure.
Yeah, except that our projections have still been fire. We got the report from the boss that we're still crushing it quite hard with them this year.
Which is great.
Yeah,
which is great, but like on a random night, it's like it could just go the other way, and then I'm just so frustrated, right? Which I probably shouldn't, because it's projections, right? But all that to say that you don't want to fall into the LeVert Quickly and Antetokounmpo on FanDuel. Let me just be different elsewhere. This is now how this is going to work. Not on FanDuel. You cannot click all 3 of those names. If you want it to be different, even 2 of the 3, it's probably not enough. You should probably play one of those shooting guards and then go elsewhere on studs if you're doing single entry 3 max. Which tonight could be, instead of It's always so incredible. Tonight, instead of playing Giannis, it might just be playing Jokic,
Right.
or whatever. Just like make it make sense for you. And in MME, you're gonna sometimes you just do like stupid things. Like you have stupid lineups, but you kind of have to let them go through. Like you can't just unclick them. You have to let them go through because sometimes those stupid lineups are the ones that win you the money. So with all that said, I just wanted to say, like, Giannis, quickly, LeVert, it's going to be it's the most obvious roster construction on FanDuel. It's good for cash games. It's horrible for tournaments, and you have to be able to acknowledge that.
Yeah, so like think about it this way. Like say they've all got 30, let's just to make it easy, say they've all got 30 or 33% optimal percentage. Say we've got 3 guys with 33% optimal percentage. Great plays, right? Those are the best plays on the evening. They're the best ones. Say that's Giannis and LeVert and quickly tonight. Now, assuming independence, which we would have because those are all different games, then the probability of all 3 working is 0.33 times 0.33 times 0.33, which is 3%. Okay, it's 3% that those 3 are all in the optimal lineup, which is the highest 3-person combo, right? Like any other combo you make is lower probability than that, but like only 3% of the time, those 3 guys are going to work out. So if you just like lock those 3 and run 150 and be like, I got to get different elsewhere, like, 97 times out of 100, you're just drawing dead before the thing even starts. So,
that's a good way to put it.
Not before it starts, but like, yeah, it's a bummer. That's how probability works. So, they're the best plays, but like they are just overowned by the public. And I know it's what we say is weird and counterintuitive, but that's kind of how it works these days. And variance is your friend because people don't expect variance. They're like, oh, there's no variance in NBA. It's the most predictable, but it's still not predictable.
No. Especially not this season. I mean, listen, I've done this quite a bit, and I'm telling you, this season has been the year. Yeah, right, for you as well. It hasn't been as consistent as other years, for sure. If someone's telling you that, they're lying through their teeth. Just not possible.
It's true, man. It is absolutely true. All right, well, that will do it for today's show. Great talk. Happy Monday, everyone. It is the Ides of March. Hope that portends good things for you instead of what it historically does. But good luck in all your tournaments tonight. We will catch you back here tomorrow, and we'll see you then. All right, take care.